And 3, 2, 1. It is another cold but starry evening in the south end of the UK, and I am joined very wonderfully with Marjan. How are you today? We've both had quite a busy week. I think we've established.
Yes, it's been a busy week. And warning, I have 2 cats, one of which is behind me now, and so they're going to be walking back and forth. And it's 3 p.m. here in Brooklyn.
Yeah, man, and it's. I mean, I was just looking at your artwork because you're mainly you do a few things. You're a digital artist, and you also produce, and you've been nominated for a few awards, which is absolutely fantastic. And I was looking through some of your stuff earlier, and it's just it's amazing. And you've been saying you've also
although one second, I don't really produce. I'm just a digital artist and an animator, but I don't really produce. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I was looking through your stuff today, and like, it's fantastic. Would you like to sort of share and show people the sort of stuff that you make, just to get it off the ground? Because it's
I guess we could just kind of do the quick. Yeah. Who am I? What am I? I'm actually let me just share my desktop, and I'm gonna have to sort of minimize the video screen so that it plays better. Just move things around. My computer art goes back to the 1980s when I showed a computer animation on a Commodore 64, which I dumped to VHS videotape at a gallery in the East Village in the 1980s. So I go back a long ways. Wow. And so I thought I'd just sort of have a little short 5-minute video, which I'm going to play as I talk on top of. So I'm going to just sort of like jump ahead to the 1990s. That's me in the 1990s, ZDF German TV spot on me. So I used to do the fractal animations in the clubs, and I would layer the fractals and sort of give them depth and reanimate them. And then I created this installation that was like a head immersive box, infinity mirrored sort of infinity box. And then I would show them also as desolid canvases. And so I was trying to find ways of materializing digital art and exhibiting. And that's me in 1995 with my first web page from the early internet.
How things have changed.
I know. And I used to also do it as a performance art piece when it was projected on me. This actually is kind of historically significant, and you can see it on the old web today. .com was the first commercial art gallery on the internet, and it was sponsored by Prodigy Inc. And I was the featured artist for the launch in 1996. And I made that 3D CG avatar myself, and the fractal animations were projected on her, and I called the piece "In Contemplation of Chaos." Then I did a whole bunch of these bald humanoids with different procedural textures. And then I did the Adoration series as large format prints. Many of these pieces won awards. I'm going to stop it on this one. It was over the course of several years. Adoration of Telephone was in SIGGRAPH's 30 Years of Computer Art International Traveling Exhibition, which went on a tour of galleries and museums all over the world back in 2003. Then in the mid-2000s, I did the visual music pieces. This is my Computer 69 from 2006. Which was the official selection of many different festivals, and it was in curated exhibitions at the Armory Show in New York and also Art Basel that year. This was my live stage-based animation kind of work from the Visual Music Marathon, which was funded by the Rockefeller Fund that you're seeing here.
Yeah.
And then in 2008, I started working with motion capture, and it was kind of like the early era of motion capture, and I was working with an improvised dancer. And then I did SCAB. You're seeing SCAB here, which was about post-traumatic stress syndrome, and it was official selection of SIGGRAPH 2009 and Best of. And after SCAB, and SCAB was kind of like me working with mocap and abstracted figures and dynamics and simulations, which to a large extent is the pipeline I'm still using today in my work. And then after SCAB, I sort of did my Of Revolutions collection, which I exhibited between 2010 and 2016 as large format prints, animated paintings, avatiered painting with the audience driving the figures with real-time mocap via Kinect and gestural control of explosions. I also showed it as sculpture and a whole bunch of different formats. And this was like really 6 years of this work exhibiting it. That's my mobile selfie portrait, also from that same collection. And this was exploring both late stage capitalism, feminist themes, and also a lot of personal stuff. Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah.
And that's the VR gallery. And there's me waving back at you from the top. Then in 2016, I started the Art Hacks on Instagram as a conceptual net art project. And my intention was to radicalize curation and democratize the exhibition space on the one hand, and to engage in a critical discourse on the other hand. And a lot of these hacks, by basically hacking my found and shot footage, by basically hacking my figures into found and shot exhibition footage, in addition to my critical discourse. And so for the last 5 years, I've been doing these. So most of the pieces that I've been exhibiting and selling are derived from these. And I also was commissioned to do augmented reality chronometric sculpture at the Smithsonian Museum. This is from the Smithsonian show back in 2018. I also did another version at the National Cathedral. Both were funded by the Halcyon Arts Foundation and curated by Artec House, the immersive digital art space. And then I started to do these print triggered AR figures. So the same mixed reality hack figures that I was doing, I also paired with physical pieces as AR for sale in galleries, etc. And so you're actually seeing the exhibit at Glitch Goddess, which went viral in 2018. And so you're seeing some of the exhibited works and the physical pieces that triggered. That was at the Tennessee Cultural Center in New York City, Snap Orlando. Jesus. So you're just seeing all the different, and this was my most recent exhibition at Art of Our Century in New York City last fall. So you're seeing those pieces, which sort of brings us up to date to SUPERRARE.
Right.
So then I kind of went on SUPERRARE. Let's just go on my SUPERRARE page. And when I first started, let's see all my artworks. When I first went on SUPERRARE, I went on SUPERRARE with this piece, which was Taking the Knee.
I mean, it is just crazy, like, especially as someone that, I mean, isn't very knowledgeable on animation and computer graphics, but like just as a observer and a perceiver of it, it is just so visceral and it's and mind blowing and such a nod to what the future of these sort of things might be.
You know, this because I would do the art fairs as they were happening. And basically what happened is when COVID happened and the art fairs sort of switched to, when the art fairs switched to web-based versions, here's my, Freeze New York hack. What I ended up doing was to actually hack the websites.
That's the lovely little COVID molecule.
Yep. And that was the internet break, the internet interlude.
Yeah, God.
So I instead of hacking the physical exhibitions, I started to sort of do the hacks based on the websites for the art fairs because they were all doing these virtual art fairs during COVID. And what happened is during, this was the actual hack version I did for Art Basel on June 4th in Switzerland. And what happened is like around the time that Art Basel was happening, in Basel, Switzerland, you know, suddenly the BLM movement happened in the United States with the tragic shooting of George Floyd. But then what really blew me away was this, like, you know, suddenly there were protests and solidarity in Paris, in Hong Kong, in London, all over the world. And I was just like really blown away by that, this idea that there could be this sort of, you know, solidarity across race and nationality, with this idea that racism is wrong. And it was like such an important human moment. And I really wanted to work with it in like, when I remember literally sitting down to do my Art Basel Miami hack, Art Basel, sorry, hack in June of last year, and thinking this is the only thing. And then I had this idea of showing a figure taking the knee in different races, genders, and also different artistic styles. You know, this idea of unity and diversity, and how we need to sort of celebrate unity and diversity. So that's actually, this is the origin of the SUPERRARE piece that I showed you. And I sort of tokenized, but for this version, the one version of SUPERRARE, I replaced all the artwork in the background with AI GAN generated paintings. And, you know, near the end, when I did the little Art Basel website, I replaced all the artwork that was on the website with AI GAN generated art. And so that's what that piece was. And this actually sold and is in the collection of Ofo. It's currently available for resale. And then this piece was Capital.
Jeez.
So the idea with this,
and then there's the Ethereum sign on the end. Is
exactly.
That the, yeah.
It's like this sort of, you know, what was fascinating too, because like, you know, I was coming on board with SUPERRARE and entering the crypto art space last September. Yes. But you know, so I could also see that something about the pandemic and the shutting down of the physical was sort of like exploding the crypto art space, and exploding NFTs, and exploding the metaverse, and the you know, virtual and XR technologies, but most importantly, the sort of financial disruption. And the growth during the pandemic has been, you know, pretty substantial. But so I had this idea of working with, I had this sort of morphing dollar figure that I'd animated in a whole bunch of my art hacks going back to 2017. You can see the morphing dollar sign in a whole bunch of them, including the glitch goddess of Art Basel Miami with Picasso, which went viral in 2018. So I already had that, and I thought it would be interesting to sort of create this chaotic transition to the Ethereum. And then what really blew me away is, you know, the dollar is like all round, and when you think about it, there's a lot of curves in the dollar. So it's sort of like the curves of the dollar are almost like rooted in the idea of the organic form and the physical. And then you sort of contrast it to this sort of, you know, pyramidal shapes of the Ethereum, which is completely different. You know, it looks like
and a nod to the complete restructuring of what the future of money and finance and capitalism could look like.
You know, I mean, when you see that like Tesla has Bitcoin and Apple computers now. So yes, I mean, this is very much a legitimate type of currency now. And I mean, I think it's and you bring up a good point, increasingly for a global economy that runs on the internet and through the internet and the metaverse. Yeah, you need a currency that's decentralized. You need a currency that's global, etc. So yeah, but for me as an artist, I think it was this idea, like for me, that the real visual aesthetic thing was the organic form of the dollar becoming this highly machined you know, Ethereum symbol. I mean, that to me was the thing that I was just kind of really getting off of. But
I mean, that one might be like, I don't know what I'd call my favorite, but that one really is so iconic in its presentation. I mean, obviously the technicality behind it's beautiful, but I really resonate with that one because
you do. It's interesting. Is there any particular reason? I mean, I'm just curious. I'm always curious.
I mean, just purely because the concepts behind it, and how relevant it is in terms of what is going to be happening for artists like yourself and many others, probably millions in the future. And we're not even seeing, we are seeing not even the baby stages. We're in the fetal stages, in my opinion. We're not even out the hatch yet. You know, if that makes any sense. You know, this is what's so amazing about it. And that's why I like that one. I love all of them. I think they're all fantastic, and all of them dating back to the 1980s. I didn't know you worked that far back, but
yeah.
This one is just so interesting. Go on.
Yeah, and then after that, I did Lord S. Now we'll just quickly watch Lord S, and then I'll explain what she is.
Who does the music for these, if I may ask?
These three, I've done the music for myself.
Yeah.
But I, generally speaking, I don't like to do the music because it takes me time.
It does take,
I mean, I'm at like basically a one-person studio. I do everything myself. You know, it's interesting because the other day when word got out that one of the better known crypto art entities is just a group of 27 people basically on Twitter, and a lot of artists were objecting to it, and everybody's bringing up Jeff Koons and Andy Warhol, and you know, and somebody said, oh, Da Vinci had studio assistants, and I felt like saying, you know, every time people say Da Vinci had studio assistants and Michelangelo had studio assistants, I would like to point out that there's a world of difference between Da Vinci and Michelangelo having studio assistants versus someone like Jeff Koons, who by his own admission can't do one of his own paintings if he had a year to do them. So, you know, people like sort of create this false equivalence.
Yes, I mean, it is.
You know, and I'm like, wait a minute. Both Michelangelo and Da Vinci were able to draw and paint things that no other living human being could. So be very clear on that idea that a studio, I mean, Gerhard Richter uses someone who primes his canvases, yes, but that's not Jeff Koons hiring MFA students to pay for him.
Yeah, it sounds like a comparison made for the complete convenience of a particular argument. And I've noticed a lot of these arguments are just on the idea that change is bad, and usually predicated on the idea that it actually helps the creators and the consumers a lot more without sort of middlemen getting in the way. And I find that this is what the internet is doing. And
but then, you know, I tweeted in response to that I personally don't want to be an art factory manager. You know, I have no desire to run a factory as an art manager. And so I make my own art because that's how I feel whole and complete. It's like the best part of my life. You know, it's like saying, oh, I'm going to hire someone to run a marathon for me, or I'm going to hire someone to climb Mount Everest for me, you know. It just makes no sense to me, but that's how I am. And I understand that other artists have a different approach, and you know, I'm not disrespecting anyone who thinks differently than me, but for me, having someone else make my art for me is like saying, oh, I'm gonna have someone else have sex instead of me. I mean, you know, you know, why would I ever do that? Because it's not just about saying, oh, I had somebody else have sex with someone famous on my behalf. You know, it's like that kind of part. And I'm like, well, why would I do that? Wouldn't I want to have the experience myself? But that's just kind of like the way I think about, you know, making art. But, you know, that's kind of me.
Well, the thing about, I mean, that's the thing about art is that, you know, like, well, and with most other professions, and when we talk about, like, you know, decentralized autonomous organizations such as DAOs, the thing about the workload is that it seems to be much more up to the choice of the creator or worker or employee, etc., with how they do it. So if you want to work on your own, then great, and if you want to find someone else, it's accessible. The barrier seems to be the sort of these echoes of traditional and traditional sort of, not oppressive, but maybe like a similar word to that sort of structure, saying, oh no, you have to do it this way, this isn't the way you have to do it. And that's what's so empowering about this whole thing, this
Right.
whole sort of revolution. Or I mean, someone on the Pizza DAO described what was happening with their work systems to basically sell pizzas as NFTs, and non-fungible tokens for people that aren't key on the lingo. So like, like virtual limited runs of beta like that are tokens basically, if that. And he was describing the sort of the process of these hundreds of people that just got together who are willing to help out and then get a slice of the pie as what is it, like effective anarchy. And I find that so interesting when we sort of talk about, we're talking about like, when you're talking about like destabilizing and restructuring capitalism, it both seems to be the case in terms of how cryptocurrency itself is handled and distributed towards creators, et cetera, but also how the workforces are even organized. And then this is the big sort of question. It's like, where is this going, right? And especially, when we're talking about sort of art like this, as a literal nail on the head as to like, sort of conceptually and artistically of what these things are happening, which are still being used, which are still going to be distributed and organized within this very system. It just there's a lot of questions, a lot of intriguing, interesting questions that make you go, wow, what is the future of it? What's the beginning of all of this, let alone what the future is going to be? It's mind-blowing.
No, I totally agree. I'm just sort of playing some of the hacks. By the way, Lourdes was born in my Art Basel 2019 art hack. This one. That's the figure that I modeled and animated that became Lourdes from that. There she is with her first draw. And that's Greta Thunberg. And that's my glitch fag. That's loosely based on Greta Thunberg. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so Lourdes, and this sold and it was paired with the physical print. So the collector has the physical print as well. Yeah. And so she's just sort of like, she starts off based on traditional ideas of beauty in terms of women, and based on sexual desire and longing from the physical world, but she doesn't sort of stay that way, because she immediately forms the polar opposite with a big rotund midsection and dropping breasts. Yeah. So I mean, so the idea with her is she's really playing with what is beauty, and she's taking some of the things that are considered as not beautiful and not attractive. Yeah. And so I sort of bring those in along, batting your eyelashes, pretty bow in your hair, all the different ideas of beauty and prettiness.
And also how socially constructed it is, right? Because that the entire, there's this very strange essentialist argument when it comes to beauty, and we can even extend this to be like economic structures, because it's what people have always known. I know someone that's like, this is the way it is. This is, this is what beauty is. This is what, this is how money should be handled. It's a very strange essentialist argument, and it just completely, and it has no concept of social construction and how these things are generated, sometimes manufactured artificially, and sometimes in the powers of people who run Vogue and all of these other magazines to just say like, this is what beauty is, and this is how it ought to say, this is how it ought to remain. It's a completely conservative argument, and we're already seeing a change in that, in sort of people on social media discussing, maybe on Twitter, and we're back, and just changing, sort of democratizing and decentralizing the concept of what it means that this should be beautiful. There's no reason why there should be a stigma against this.
Yeah, and this is like an idea that I've worked with a lot in the past, and actually, and I agree with you. And to me, sometimes I think, for an artist, it's a real challenge to sort of create beauty out of all of these different ideas. And actually, I was waiting to get this up, but just as a testament to what you were saying, that like back in 2018, I did this art hack. It was Art Basel was happening. This is when Glitch Goddess was born. And I mean, she got like millions of views, and and over close to about 100,000 shares, but I'll just play it.
That's amazing.
Very interesting. We often say that magical realism, every woman has stories of being excluded. Let's talk about gender. It's been an ongoing battle. I was not aware of how difficult it would be. I wanted to do something. Women make babies, men make culture. I created 3 fictional critics who had.
I do just love the music as well, and I love there's a particular sort of style that sort of goes with these sort of galleries, these virtual exhibitions. A lot of deconstructed club and stuff. I'm actually going to be working with someone soon, hopefully, who does very similar music to this, and I think it's a beautiful coupling to sort of go with this sort of stuff, because it you know, the sort of the sort of acclimatization of saturation and the glitching out and sort of the blending of all sorts of different cultures and ideas and technology, and as well. It's a beautiful coupling. As someone that like works primarily in music, it's so effective to sort of see that, you know.
Yeah, actually, for this one, and this is the famous glitch goddess, and she glitches the existing idea that from art history that a woman is a singular form. You know, that she's either, you know, Rubenesque or she's a contemporary, very slender, sort of a female. So she sort of becomes every body type, from pregnant to old to young to, you know, every body shape. So that's the glitch goddess, and that's why she's called the glitch goddess, because that's she's glitching. But the voiceover from this art hack that I used is the voices of women artists, very famous women artists, talking about inequality in the art world. And if you look at all the comments from all the women, they were all basically you know, identifying with the piece and appreciating it. And I incorporated a lot of the comments in the audio for the AR app, which comes with the prints. So Lord S, as a sort of recent crypto art piece, came out of this existing dialogue that I had with the art hacks online. And yeah, I did the music for this one as well. Although I don't like, by the way, doing the music once again, because it takes a lot of time.
Too long time,
yeah. And she also sold, and I believe she's not currently up for sale. The collector doesn't have it up for sale, but these 2 are currently back up for sale by the collector. Right. And then this piece, this went viral in 2018. The original had millions of views on the Nowness post on Facebook, and out of virals on Instagram, it has like 2.2 million views. So it went viral all over the internet, and it was called Baiser or Kiss at Mary Boone with Gantt collage, you know, in glasses and waxes, was the name of the original art hack that I did in 2018. So everybody kept asking about buying it, and then I was like, well, I know that right now there's kind of like a little bit of a debate in the I think there are a lot of works that are sold in the crypto art space that contain trademark registered characters and other copyrighted works. And, you know, I mean, whether people are complaining or not, I don't know. And I don't want to get into that debate, because I respect transgressive art practices. I mean, my art hacks are transgressive. And as I'm always fond of saying, you know, to hack is merely transgressive, but to do so with a critical discourse is transformational. So I'm not disrespectful of, I always say that, yeah. But I don't want to be disrespectful of other people's transgressive practices, because I'm engaged in a transgressive art practice myself. But I think that when it comes to reselling the art, I feel like, no, I mean, you know, that has to respect copyright of other artists, you know? Yeah. It's like, it's okay for me to do it as street art, have other people's work, you know, in the background or whatever. But if I'm going to create a piece to tokenize, then it should be different. So what I did for this piece is I completely recreated the original Kiss.
I watched a video about depression, and again, what the guy says is that one of the I mean, this might be relevant. One of the ideas of depression is that you can't have communion with other people. Everyone is trapped in their own body, and I think that does reflect. It almost it's sort of parallel here, like an opposing parallel here, when you sort of watch this, and you see the two people kiss, and they merge together, and they blend into each other, as if to sort of say, your experience is my experience, and and our identities are fluid and cross over.
That happens at some point during physical intimacy.
Yes.
Sort of merge. But you know what's interesting? Because I was reading the comments when this went viral, and the comments are really really interesting to me, because it sparked all this conversation about what relationships are and what da. But somebody said, "Oh, how come they don't turn purple when they merge?" And I actually happened to see that comment, so I immediately commented back to them that because they still retain their own distinct, separate. That even when enmeshed, you're still separate. I mean, you may perceive it as you're one, but you're still physically and biologically, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, I agree that at some point during, during physically intimate experiences, yeah, there is a sort of oneness that happens.
That's what's so interesting. I mean, that is interesting to sort of think about, like, biological separateness when we talk about that sort of thing, because it does ask questions, and some of them could be sort of like generated into sort of like how we're sort of made to see ourselves, and in terms of like in terms of biological separation, what that entails when we actually talk about what joins and what separates, and what is the part what is the part of ourselves that does join with this other person. So that's very interesting, and I actually prefer that they remain separate, and I think it looks aesthetically better, and that must resonate with some conceptual thing into like why that is why you've chosen to keep them separate as opposed to blend them together. But that's having those two ideas like cross together.
Somebody contacted me for a possible future commission for another kiss, so who knows, maybe in that one. I mean, I have no ideas about another version, because I usually kind of I really try to work from a sort of spontaneous creative flow type of a place.
Yeah.
And I think that the technique of modeling and animation that I use really requires that I kind of enter a trance state almost when I'm working. It's kind of like doing improvisational stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't have too many ideas. I mean, I feel like I'll eventually start modeling and animating, and something will happen, and then I'll kind of know what it is and make it. But right now I don't have a lot of ideas, but yeah.
Well, when I'm often when I'm on my own and I'm producing music on my computer. I mean the concept of time just disappears. I'm just locked in. Yeah, exactly. I'm locked in, and suddenly 6 hours go by, and I spent those 6 hours in that time space, which is separate from like the calendar time space, if you want to talk about it like that. And it's very interesting. Yeah, it's. I mean, and that's sort of the thing. I mean, and a lot of the time, that's how artists actually have to create things. They have to, they have to lock themselves in, and they have to not. Oftentimes they have to not even know what comes out the other side. Often, like, the process is doing them rather than they're doing the process.
Exactly. I literally sometimes, like, if I was to actually stop and reflect on what I'm doing when I'm animating, I mean, the sheer complexity of what I'm doing would make me kind of freak out. So it does feel as if there is a higher intelligence, for lack of a better term, or some higher ability that's working kind of through me.
Yeah.
Because everything is so fluid and effortless, yet it's really complex. And if I'm not in creative flow, it isn't very easy for me to animate in the style that I am. Because I don't have a lot of references. It's not like, because I was a commercial production artist, and I used to be a character animator. And so the first thing I had to do when I had to do a character animation was to look at 10,000 references. Well, 10,000 exaggerate. I had to find at least a whole bunch of references to look at and study from frame to frame to know what I'm doing. But in this style of animation, I have no reference. The reference is inside of me, you know? And it isn't one that I see from beginning to end. It's one that's coming literally 1 second at a time, like that, you know, like a steady transmission. It's like a jazz improvisation. I can't anticipate it. You know, when I'm in the flow of it, it happens. And there isn't anything like it. It's not like, oh, I'm studying a piece of guitar and I'm going to replicate it or, you know, play this guitar riff. In a jazz improvisation, you have no idea what's going to happen, you know?
And to know what's going to happen is to defeat the purpose, like, you know,
exactly.
like with you know, and again with like samurais, and you know, if they anticipated where the enemy was going to strike, then they would lose concentration. It's, you know, this whole Zen, this whole similar thing where we're sort of, you know, where, you know, and I think even like socially, like sort of learning that sort of planning and preemptively sort of forecasting what will happen in terms of so many things. I think it's more prevalent now that that's not actually how things are normally created and how things are created well.
Yeah, and I think definitely, you know, it's, for me, it's the same way. The only difference is that once I kind of finish the whole animation in that sort of creative flow, then comes the part where I have to clean it up and refine it and you know, finish it. And I think that part is like kind of, you know, the cleaning it up and refining it and perfecting it. That part is not creative flow. That's just like the part of me that's kind of fixing stuff. As I call it.
I mean, Stephen King said, "Write drunk, edit sober," right? And that's
exactly. It's like the editing part, and it's like exactly the same way, which I don't think jazz musicians do. I mean, they just kind of do the improvisation and that's it.
And it's down to some manager to make them recreate it in the studio. Like that thing you did with the sax, do that again. They're like, I don't know how. Like, it's not the right place and time.
Right. Which brings us up to the latest piece, which I just tokenized.
Yeah. Made an NFT, right? That's that. So for the audience, yeah. Jeez. I mean, I'm not really much of a visual artist. I know a few people are, but I can't even begin to imagine how to create something like this. It is just. I mean, you know, I mean, you've had a lot of experience.
This I had fun with for a lot of reasons, because, well, you know, I mean, suddenly the people had I did this literally just as people had gotten, I think, like 6 million at Christie's. It was right around that time, and crypto artist Stella Bell was curating this show in Crypto Voxels, which I can also show you if you want me to take you for a tour there. Please. But she had just curated, she was curating a show called Fuck Wall Street, and or F-K Wall Street or whatever. And she had asked me and all these other crypto artists to put in pieces for it. And I thought, oh, you know, here's this, it sort of felt like this is the crypto art movement, you know. And March was also coming up. And so I had this idea of putting the Wall Street Bull. That's, by the way, the New York Stock Exchange. So I literally went there.
Is it?
That is the New York Stock Exchange behind there. That is actually the New York Stock Exchange, the outside of the building. So whenever you see the shots of that big blue room with all the screens and brokers, that's inside that building. So this is about putting the Wall Street Bull outside, and the crypto art writer is a female figure, and the eyeball is sort of like the eyeball economy, if you may, for the head, and this sort of new visual ecosystem for investment and tokenization, and also as alternative economy. And she, of course, in my way, goes from slender to heavy and glitched and other artistic styles. And at some point she glitches the bull too. And I just forgot to mention about the music. The last piece in this piece, both had their music done by the H3SH. So, and I'm working with him right now in a bunch of pieces where he's doing the music. And to be honest with you, I am so happy not to be doing the music because it's a lot of work for me, and I am not the best person for it. But I feel like I do have another Lourdes, and I did do the sound for it because for some of the pieces I feel like I have to do it, you know. I don't know how to explain it, but I just feel like I have to do it because I have something in mind which I can't explain. And when I start working, it'll come out just like, you know, the way I'm animating. So I can't even communicate it to a musician to do it. But I think for this piece in the Kiss, it was kind of easy because, you know, I think he had a good sense of what I was doing and he was able to deliver really well. So I think there are pieces that definitely call for collaboration with musicians, but then there are pieces where I feel like I have to do it because I don't know what it is, but as I play with the samples and everything, it'll come just like the animation does.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what it's going to sound like.
Yeah,
I completely understand. Yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah. So that's this piece. And you know, it's Women's Month. And so for me, it was really important to put a female. And, you know, because the interesting part of the crypto art scene is there are women in the crypto art scene selling. There are artists of color. You know, I myself am a, you know, political refugee from the Middle East. So, you know, I mean, we're certainly not the traditional selling artists of the traditional art world. So I wanted her to be female. I wanted her to be a rainbow of colors because I wanted to say, look, this is a completely new type of an artist that's also emerging. And by the way, I am a huge fan of white male artists. So I am definitely not the kind of
no, but that's not the point. That's
some of my favorite artists are white male. So I don't
like
have
Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol is like, you know, he's
Andy Warhol is not one of my favorite.
Is he not? Okay. Well, he's white. He's a white male, you know.
Yeah, but I think they're, I mean, look, Gerhard, Anselm Kiefer and Gerhard Richter are like, you know, I just want to cry every time I see their paintings because they're so good, you know?
It's very funny. It's very funny that a lot of, well, with sort of leftist and sort of progressive commentators, they've now had to like, they have to change what they say specifically to be like being a white male isn't bad because the sort of the other people on the other side have this sort of weird thing in their heads that because people of color,
I don't think any
people of color
should, honestly, I don't think any person should be judged on the basis of their race, period.
No, exactly. I mean, exactly.
I really personally, I find that is, I was raised to not think that way. And and now I'm being told that's the wrong way to be. But it's like I almost have a visceral reaction to judging people on the basis of their race, ethnicity, or gender orientation. Well, I feel like people have to be evaluated and respected as individuals.
The thing is that I don't think any leftists to begin with, no one of note really was saying that there was something wrong with being white or male. It just means that there's a privilege that the white male. There's nothing. I mean, I'm a white male. I'm a straight white male. What else? I'm cis. You know, and I you know, and for me to embody any sort of guilt for that would be nonsense. And I think any sort of leftist commentator that's credible would obviously agree with me. There is nothing wrong with it. It's about analyzing sort of ways that people have been advantaged in the past, and not to take it upon yourself to change all of that because I'm one person and everyone is one person. It's about just examining it, and of course a typical conservative response would be why, and we're already seeing the benefits of people asking the question because now we're seeing such changes in the ways that markets are being done and that artists are being done, and how people are getting new experiences from people at disadvantage. And it's not this sort of like, oh, I go up so you go down kind of thing. It's that we're all benefiting from this sort of cultural revolution, perhaps, if you want to call it that. And
no, I absolutely agree. And you know, I guess my point was that, you know, I don't want to see museums or galleries ban white male artists because, you know, there are many white male artists whose work has nurtured me and inspired me, you know.
Yeah, I'd want to look at the reasons behind that, but I do think for the most part it would sell it wrong, and it would get in the way. It would get in the way of what this is all about, if I may say so. So yeah. Fantastic.
So that's the Crypto Art Rights the Bull. It's currently up for reserve auction. And yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this piece, especially outside the New York Stock Exchange. And, you know, and I have to say, I think, you know, it freaks some people out because putting a woman on top of the Wall Street Bull is still a hard sell, you know? People have such an aversion to that. I mean, I think if it was a male figure, if it was like a Pepe figure, it would fit a little bit better into the things that people like in the crypto art space. But I don't think it would capture the moment as well, you know? Yeah. It would just be like, but it wouldn't really deliver the moment. It wouldn't really deliver and
above all, deliver what you're particularly interested in showing people as well. So, and above all, not be quite what you want to show people and in your art. And that's why choosing the woman as a stock exchange was you know was such a good idea. And it was what you wanted to sort of, it was the way thing you wanted to say. And perhaps other artists that are interested in Pepe can now sort of take inspiration from that and put Pepe up in various other places, you know. I
like Pepe. I mean, I like seeing what all the artists are doing with Pepe. So absolutely. Whenever I see Pepe, I smile, I laugh. I haven't done any Pepes, but you know, I do like the sort of whimsy and playfulness of the crypto art space, and I'm respectful of it. I think I try to usually have more layers of meaning, and I think I lean more in the direction of things that could be arguably more profound or sublime in what I'm doing. But that's just that's just the way I am. Yeah. And it isn't really a reflection of what other art
exactly.
That's
exactly what I was saying. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is what I mean. Yes, it's amazing. It's amazing, and it's. I mean, you've been doing this for so long. I do think, you know, when this all kicks off, and you'll be one of the sort of. I think you were actually described as a trailblazer in the article I read about you, as a trailblazer for the art to come, and I thought that was so good. I thought it was like,
yeah. I'll tell you what the hard part of being, you know, a trailblazer, pioneering, and innovative artist as a woman is that I always feel like saying, if I hadn't innovated my style of figuration and animation as a woman, if I'd done it as a man, it would have, you know, people. It's like it would be such a thing. But I think when women see a woman innovate, or if you sort of step outside of what people expect to see from women artists, it's like nobody knows what to do with it.
Yeah, and that's what postmodern feminism should be all about. It's about sort of questioning. Yes, on the surface, these you know, on the very surface, these sorts of you know, women can go and work, women can vote. This is all fine. What postmodern feminism is so interested in is deeper systemic and phenomenological ways of seeing people, like Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, which comes, you know, which I would place relevance in terms of relevance, like after the fact that women could go out and work. It's more important, you know, the second, you know, when we think about the second sex, it's like, well, of course it's a woman. We think, you know, and these sorts of things are so interesting when we think about how to categorize the world, and how those categories aren't reflective of reality, but reflective on older sort of deeper conceptual chains that we don't even have access to, because it's the norm, and that's what's so. And the same, you know, to sound like a dog with a bone. The same with money, and, you know, and how money should be operated, and it will be one of those things that it will be ridiculed until it is just seems as self-evident, and everyone will be doing crypto and being like, oh yeah, this is just, and then this is the way it should be done.
This is the interesting thing. I mean, on some levels, I mean, since I was kind of exhibiting in the early internet in 1996, but I was also working in New York Silicon Alley as a production artist. So I was kind of like, my joke was, I was working both sides of the line, you know, applied arts and fine arts at the same time. And I'm very grateful to my production work experience, because all my skills are because of my production work experience, you know. And that's kind of why I did production work back then, to build up my skills so I could animate in the styles that I wanted to. But there are a lot of similarities between the crypto art scene and the 90s internet. And I think a lot of people talk about that. And I think that I lived through that era, the 90s internet era. And
Yes.
I worked for a lot of the early companies. That box that I showed, that installation, the box with the fractal animation.
The fractals, yes, at the very
that
beginning.
went straight to internet pioneer Josh Harris's CEO office at Jupiter Communications. So,
Yeah, right.
which is kind of like the ground zero of the early internet in New York Silicon Alley. So I lived through that era, and I saw a lot of that sort of Jupiter, Avalanche, the first advertising agency. I knew Michael Block and Avalanche very well. And so I watched that whole era, and it was very similar. There was a lot of money pouring in suddenly. But I also watched the bubble burst in like 99, 2000, 2001. And that's kind of like when the suits came in and Web 2.0 started, and they sort of, things became very corporate, and you know, that sort of anything can happen.
Oligarchical ad space and data collection.
But the early internet was very utopianist. I do remember that. And so
there was that computer scientist from the 70s who sort of, I think it was the 70s, and saw how it was linked, psychedelia and the counterculture movement and acid and LSD and all of that was so connected with what the promising futures of the internet and cyberspace, believing that, you know, this is a world where governments can't trace us. This is a world where we can express ourselves and do whatever we want.
Contrast that against the way, the extent to which we're all monitored right now. Exactly
my point. The
point I'm trying to make is a lot of, I mean, I was part of the groovy internet 1.0 utopianist generation of idealist type artists. And, you know, I have to admit that the internet, but you know, the internet is now complex, because when my glitch goddess went viral, suddenly I paused and I thought, the internet has matured. If a feminist piece like this can go viral, something has happened. And then I realized that, you know, the internet is like kind of like around 27, 28 years old now, and it's kind of going through its second Saturn return. No, first Saturn return. So it is having this reckoning of sorts, you know, and we're seeing the dark side of that too, with the surveillance state, the social media platforms and the power they have over deplatforming. Yeah. And suddenly you realize, wow, we're about to lose free speech. We're about to lose, you know, all the fruits of liberal humanism when you think about it. Yeah. With this sort of new world order that's quite scary. And it's like the antithesis of everything Internet 1.0 was about. And that's why Berners-Lee wants to create the new open internet again as an alternative to social media platforms owned by the large corporations. And I'm with him 100%, needless to say. But it is a very scary thing to see the dream of Internet 1.0 turn into its polar opposite.
Yes, absolutely. And this is where Web 3.0 comes in.
Web 3.0 comes in, but this is the problem with Web 3.0. I mean, you're really dealing with the convergence of a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. With the idea of tokenizing virtual metaverse and virtual assets. So a lot can go wrong right there.
Yes.
You know, a lot. You're looking at artists complaining about gas fees for minting being upwards of $100 or almost $100, and you know they're trying to sell these, especially artists of third world countries who are selling the work for like $150. So if 100 of that has to go towards the gas fee, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay.
And so already you're seeing some access issues, but hey, you could argue those existed even more so with Internet 1.0, and I agree. So there's potential for good, but there's also potential for a lot of the type of content that emerges from the eyeball economy and the attention economy coming to replace any kind of creative work that was about being thoughtful and self-reflective.
Yeah.
There's a whole criticism now going on about the problem how technology creates flatness in culture.
Yeah.
So all the cultural works are flat. They have no depth. They don't haunt you for days and weeks, you know, like earlier works of art used to, books that would haunt you for years, you know?
Yeah.
And on the one hand, you have a lot of the classics, which were those types of books, being removed from the education system. And then you have this sort of contemporary culture that's all about the flatness of technology. And that technology likes to keep it that way. So that has an effect on us, you know? And then you see that reflected in the political elections in the UK and the United States, you know, and fake news, and how identitarianism is tearing everybody apart. The aspects of humanity that should unify us and unite us and create for this sort of thoughtful, compassionate spaces are fast disappearing. And this is where art and culture has to step in. I mean, historically, that's what all art and culture has done, is to create that space for reflection and contemplation of what is happening right now. Great artists and art movements of every era have done that. They have created that space for thoughtfulness and reflection across every medium, from visual arts to music to literature to performative arts, you know, when you think about it. But the question becomes, what is going to do that in our world is if everything's about getting eyeballs. And well, you know, when you sort of, people bring up criticisms about crypto art, that some of the crypto art is, you know, not.
Doesn't haunt you for days or years.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do serious art with my crypto art, but a lot of people point that out, that I do, and I agree, I do, because that's my intention. I go into it with that intention.
Yes.
But a lot of the crypto art that's selling and getting the headlines is more situated in concept art or CG art or illustration, not necessarily sort of works that would normally create that thoughtfulness or that space for contemplation and reflection that I was talking about. So the question becomes, yes, Web 3.0 has a lot of potential, but the question we have to ask is potential for what?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, great. I mean,
more of this, more of what we already have. That's not such a great thing. A correction or intervention that might be better. You know, I mean, we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of potential here for it to go every which way there is.
To create depth in an economy of eyeballs.
It's very difficult. But this is the weird part. Like, I've been able to do it to some extent, and my metrics are pretty decent, considering I don't have a big name gallery behind me. I'm an independent artist, and I do work it's very, very not situated in the realm of, you know, concept CG art, let's say. Yeah. My work doesn't look like people's work. And I'm not saying this to disrespect people. I'm just pointing out, you know, the visual distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so for me to even have the metrics that I have is almost like a testament that you can do it. You know what I'm saying? And there is an audience. So it's really about, but then there's a part of me goes, you know what, maybe that's how it was always, you know?
Yeah, I mean, one question I've always had regarding technology and sort of eyeballs on screens is the body and how and sort of situatedness in the world, and that's what I find is probably our biggest hurdle when it comes to technology. I don't think VR can sort that out. I think what personally intrigues me about this sort of this world is that people are already hating the fact that they have to work 9 to 5s, and people are hating the fact that they don't get recognition for their art at all, be it digital or otherwise. And people and unity and diversity are not realized to the extent that they should be. There's loads of problems that this sort of movement, like the crypto art movement, or whatever you want to call it, is completely changing. Your question about profundity and depth when it comes to it is profundity. Yes, it's the word, I believe. Yeah. Profundity is an unanswered question, and it's one that I haven't really taken the time to think about. So that's very, very interesting. Right. You have been great finding some time to come on and talk about this. This has been brilliant, and I wish you very well. I hope next week isn't as chock-a-block for you. And just thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been great.
Awesome, great, and it was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too. Lovely. Thanks very much. And everyone who's watching, I will see you very soon for the next episode. And leave a comment, subscribe, follow us on Twitter at Books on Chain, and just tell us what you think and tell us what you'd like to see more of. So thanks very much for watching, and thanks very much for being here, Marjan. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.